Well, I'm very happy to have this opportunity. As you know, I've been governor 5 years. Inherited quite a challenging time. We had three crises at the same time, ethical crises with one governor in jail, another one going to jail. Had to deal with enacting strong ethics standards. And for example, the pension board of the state, we had to replace the trustees. There was serious misconduct at the teachers' retirement system. And we enacted far-reaching ethics standards for all of our employees, and including campaign finance reform for the candidates for office. Regrettably, my opponent has broken the limits, and I think that was unfortunate. For the first time, Illinois, when this cycle, was going to have reasonable limits on campaign donations, and a self-funding candidate decided to smash those to smithereens. But having said that, I think we've made progress. We always have to be on our toes when it comes to anything regarding the integrity of our government. We also, at the time I became a governor, had to deal with serious recession, worst in my lifetime, caused great harm to our country. Many people lost their jobs, including here in Illinois, and it really affected our state finance, and that was our third crisis, how to deal with paying the bills. And I think we've been able to dig out of those challenges in the area of paying our bills. We're not there yet, but we're almost to a 30-day cycle of paying the obligations of our state. At one time, the bills were about $9.9 billion unpaid, but I campaigned in the last time, as you know, on getting revenue through the income tax. We were able to accomplish that in January of 2011. Much of that revenue has been used to pay our bills, including our pension bills. I'm the first governor, I think, in anyone's memory who has fully paid the pension amount to all three pension systems every single year. And I believe that's imperative. Having said that, we've also paid down other bills that the state has incurred. I know this newspaper and your colleagues have focused on that issue, and we've made progress there, and I want to continue to make progress. And earlier this year, I laid out a budget that was commended by all three rating agencies for being responsible, for paying bills, at the same time for making sure we invest in education, the largest investment in classroom funding in state history. That's what I proposed. And the same way with investing in early childhood education, which is very, very important in my opinion. And we want to invest in a 5-year blueprint, over $6 billion in education. My running mate is Paul Vallis, who lived in Springfield for 13 years, as a matter of fact. His wife was a police officer here. And Paul and I both believe in laying out a blueprint, not just for one fiscal year, but for 5 fiscal years. And I think it's important that the rating agencies see that, see where we're going, where we want to go. I think we're making proper investments not only in schools and education, but in health care. Under the Affordable Care Act, we've enrolled 668,000 people so far in health care. It began in, I think, October or so of last year, and we've had great success, far above what was expected. I think it's important to make sure, well, I agreed to pass the law, actually, to make sure that the money would be able to come to Illinois for health care. Over in Indiana and Wisconsin, they turned that money down, and I thought that was a very bad mistake, and people who would be entitled to health care under the federal law are denied that in those states, not here in Illinois. We have more work to do when the new enrollment period begins on November 15th. I also, on public safety, I have fought for resources for our state police and for others in public safety. It's very important to make sure we have cadet classes. We just began a new one, or authorized a new one. And for those who don't, I think, really level with the people of Illinois, like my opponent, a budget defines your values. And I think we need to make investments that are fair to our school children, to our citizens who need health care, to all of us who want public safety, and you have to pay for that. And in this campaign, I've really seen an opponent who wants to blow an $8 billion hole in our state budget. The rating agencies would laugh him out of town with the proposal that he's come up with. It just doesn't balance out. It doesn't add up. And this community in particular, Springfield, the school district would suffer grievously a lack of state funding. I want to add more to state funding for local school districts as the very best way to hold down property taxes. If we're going to do that, we should do it the way the Illinois Constitution outlined in 1970, passed by the voters in a referendum, that the state should be primarily responsible for funding education. That's what my budget tries to do. It gets to that, move us in that direction. At the same time, we propose targeted tax relief, such as doubling the earned income tax credit. I've already done that once as governor since we passed the income tax revenue. We also, after that, double the value of the number one way to alleviate poverty through the tax system. It's called the earned income tax credit, which gives families raising children, families making less than $50,000 tax relief. I want to double that in Illinois in a targeted way. Same way with property tax relief. Focus on people who need help the most when paying their property taxes, and also have an income tax-based system that's based on ability to pay. To me, that's a fundamental principle of fairness. My opponent thinks the tax rate, he should get a tax cut of $1 million, and schools in our state would suffer tremendous cuts. Cuts in school budget would be about $4 billion. That's the wrong way to go. And I just want to finish up. The reason we made a comeback, the way we made progress in Illinois on paying the bills, investing in education and health care, but also our economy is doing much better. In the last 6 or so months, we've had the steepest decline in unemployment in 30 years in Illinois. Unemployment going down, and in the last month, our jobs way up. In the last month alone, we've added 13,800 jobs. To me, the way you do this is you invest in education, in the skills of your workers, in the educated workforce, and you also invest in infrastructure, roads and bridges and rail systems and water systems, and building new schools and repairing schools to make them 21st century ready. We've done that. I got that passed my first 10 weeks or so as governor. This is the biggest construction program of public works in state history, biggest in the country, really, of any state, and we want to continue on that path. That's how you get your economy back in gear, and I'm glad to answer any questions that you have.
Are you for a progressive income tax?
I believe in a progressive income tax.
Which is a constitutional amendment.
It takes a constitutional amendment. There is an advisory question on the ballot with respect to those who make more than $1 million. The rate over $1 million would be higher on the income tax, much like Iowa or Wisconsin or most other states in the country that have an income tax. Millionaires pay a higher rate than people who make the minimum wage. My opponent feels that the rate should be the same for a minimum wage worker as well as much as a billionaire, and I don't think that's fair. And frankly, if Teddy Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, came through Springfield 105 or 10 years later, he'd be aghast to hear that Republicans would be not for a fair system.
Are you for specifically the Harmon plan that was put out this last spring?
I think they call that the fair tax. I was open-minded to that, but I think there's other proposals that are worth considering when it comes to a constitutional amendment. I did sign the law for a statewide referendum on whether or not millionaires should have a surtax of 3% on their income above $1 million. that money would be used for schools in Illinois dedicated and earmarked for education for every single school district based on the number of pupils in the district. And I'm going to vote yes for that. My opponent's a no vote. And I think that's one way to get to what the constitutional provision says, that the state should be primarily responsible for funding schools. For the state to cut back on its investment is the wrong way to go and will invariably lead to a property tax increase. And I don't agree with that.
News of the day, the 58 people that were supposed to be gone by the end of the month at IDOT, your administration apparently has now said they can stay until there's a court hearing. The Ronner campaign says 103 other people should all be fired because you're protecting them, and what about, and you talked about some of them are covered and went through the process, but 20 of them are exempt from Route 10. And so, you know, they're saying, of course, they use Pinocchio and you're not telling the truth. Your thoughts on, you know,
well,
was it a mistake to fire the 58, and
no,
was it a mistake to keep the 103 or the last 20?
Okay. I put a Secretary of Transportation in who's a very committed person, a very knowledgeable person. She graduated from West Point, first in her class. She was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship. She's a decorated military officer. She served in Iraq. She led a command in Korea. She served excellent job as our Director of Veterans Affairs. I put Erica Borgren to be Secretary of Transportation. She follows the rules, and she determined that that position of staff assistant could be materially reorganized and abolished, and that was recommended by the Inspector General. That's what we've done. Those who are affected filed a lawsuit. The case, I think, is going to be heard on October 28th. So we agreed to wait till a judge heard the matter, and we'll see what the judge has to say. But we feel that that position should be abolished. As far as the whole issue itself, with respect to those who were there, I followed every single recommendation of the Inspector General, and I went beyond that. We've proposed by executive order a merit board for the Department of Transportation that didn't exist before. We are reviewing every single position, including the 20 you talked about, to see whether or not they should be considered policy makers. For those who have those positions, they will retain them until the review is completed. But I think the best way to go is to have a new secretary who understands exactly what the hiring rules are under the law and who carries those out to the team.
What about transportation experience? Was that not a problem that you put in? A Secretary of Transportation is not an engineer or has something in that field?
Well, I think that's worthy of note. There are engineers in the department that are well-skilled, but I think you need a leader there who will make sure the department complies with what I feel are appropriate standards and what the law requires. And so that's why Erica Borgren is the Secretary of Transportation. She knows how to lead. She's a very good leader. I think that department needs a strong leader who understands all the rules in the law and carries them out.
But you said you expected your previous transportation secretary to know the rules and enforce them, even when your office made recommendations for hires. 4 years ago, there was an issue with the meritorious good time early release program, and I believe you even told our editorial board at the time that you had given directives that certain inmates were not supposed to be released under that program.
Well,
what is that getting translated from your orders or desires to the people who are actually executing this stuff?
Well, let me take one thing at a time. With the predecessor secretary, in the Inspector General's report, indicated to the Inspector General that she wasn't aware of the hiring rules. And I was unhappy to read that, and I acted appropriately. I replaced her with someone who does pay attention to those very important rules. Now, in the matter involving the Department of Corrections, with respect to anything there was clear directives to that former director that no violent prisoners guilty of any violent crimes were to be given any credit. And that wasn't carried out to the to my satisfaction. And as a result, the moment I learned that, literally the moment I learned that, I shut down that program on that very day, and I appointed a well-respected judge, Judge Erickson, who did a comprehensive report on this whole issue of credit during prison time. Now, for those who are in corrections, they can tell you to keep the inmates doing the right thing and trying to rehabilitate themselves, it is important to give credit for good behavior and good conduct. And that is well accepted nationwide. But in Illinois, that system was very confused under the law. And what we had to do at the judge's recommendation is pass a new law that was not confusing, that was crystal clear on who would be awarded any kind of credit. We did that in a bipartisan way. We passed the law. I signed it. It's been commended by folks all over who are involved in corrections and this whole area as a very specific, concrete way of dealing with a very difficult issue. Now, when it comes to violent criminals, they have long prison sentences. They're going to stay in prison. With respect to others who have more limited prison terms, if they have good behavior and they manifest that under the law that's very clear and specific, they can earn supplemental credit. But that's the way it is, and I think we had to do that, and I signed the law, and I think it's a law that's worked pretty well. I'm not sure I brought the statistics here today, but I know I got them recently. Of the supplemental credit recipients, 4,376. The overwhelming majority, more than 90%, everything has worked exactly as expected.
Yeah, given that your opponent brought up that 9-year-old yesterday, and I guess he said it was early release, but it was really just under what is there now. Are you satisfied with what is there now?
No, that person was on parole,
okay,
and he served more than half his sentence. That was a smear. And I'm very disappointed that anybody would try to take a tragic death of a 9-year-old. And I work a lot with parents who have lost their children. I've gone to the funerals of police officers as well as young people who have lost their lives to gun violence. To try to take that tragic incident of a young boy 9 years old losing his life and blame it on me is really beyond the pale. And it's typical of the lack of substance we're seeing from the other candidate. Doesn't have a budget, won't give specifics, won't even come here to talk to you about his non-budget. But then, as a distraction from that lack of substance, engages in a smear like that. I've never seen that in my whole life, and I think he really deserves to be, disciplined for doing something like that. Yeah, wouldn't make it in my family for that kind of falsehood.
Governor, the General Assembly left without enacting the extension of the income tax that you had advocated.
Mm-hmm.
What remains to be done this fiscal year in order to meet constitutional requirements?
Yeah. Well, I better win the election on November 4th. If I win, I think some of our legislators who were reluctant to vote for the budget I proposed in the spring, that was commended by all three rating agencies as affordable and responsible, as the way to go to pay the bills. I had a number of legislators come to me and say they wanted to see what the election would bring. And I am not afraid to go before the people of Illinois and tell the truth. The truth is maintaining the income tax rate that we have now and putting in targeted tax relief like improved value of the earned income tax credit and property tax relief to every single homeowner in our state. That is a responsible way to go forward and pay our bills. Now, we'll have that debate on November 19th. That's the next time the legislature comes in. I intend to win the election and show legislators that doing the right thing, the responsible thing, not being reckless and not saying ridiculous things that are unaffordable, that will be defeated by the people of Illinois. The people of Illinois do not want extreme radical cuts in important things like schools, or prisons, or making sure that we have enough health care, or helping our veterans. All these things are fundamental to a decent society and a strong economy. And our budget will help a strong economy, whereas the opponent that I am facing, he's proposing what they did in Kansas. radical cuts, and look what happened in that state. They don't have enough money to pay their bills. They've harmed their schools. They're hurting their economy, and I don't think that is what the people of Illinois want. And in answering your question, Joan, you've had to deal with the legislators on budgets as well. They tend to be, at times, a bit on the timid side, and they want to wait till the new governor shows up, whoever's elected by the people. And I hope I'm that person on November 19th, and I'm going to tell them I went all over Illinois talking about the need to properly fund our schools through the income tax, have enough revenue so we don't have 1 out of 6 teachers getting laid off. That's what my opponent's budget will do. His revenue proposal is a service tax on things like garbage pickup, taxing someone who's using a lawyer to adopt a child or to prepare a will. I don't think that is in any way enough to pay the bills, and it's not fair anyhow. The tax system should be fundamentally based on ability to pay, using the income tax, and shifting the burden, as my opponent tries to do, to ordinary people who live from check to check and have modest incomes. That's not right.
Have you closed the door to any kind of service tax? I mean, notwithstanding the garbage tax or the tax on legal services, but is anything?
I feel, by and large, service taxes are very regressive. They are not based on ability to pay. These are sales taxes, really, when all is said and done. I was at a gathering, a couple weeks ago up there in Chicago, where my opponent was saying we should not tax investment, we should tax consumption. That's taxing consumers. Well, this is not fair. People who are modest income, who are raising kids, should not have artificial levies heaped upon them in my opinion, a sneaky way, raise the price of goods and services that they rely on. That's not fair. We can go forward in Illinois with the current income tax rate we have, which I want to point out, here in Springfield or here up in Chicago, the income tax rate is less today than it is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Des Moines, Iowa, Louisville, Kentucky, St. Louis, Missouri, or Indianapolis, Indiana. All of those communities have a higher income tax rate than we do right now. And I think maintaining the income tax to have enough revenue for our schools and avoid laying off 1 out of 6 teachers, slashing the classroom budgets all across the state, we ought to maintain what we have and put in targeted tax relief for families who need it the most, and avoid service taxes that my opponent wants to heap upon ordinary people.
But again, some of the taxes that he's mentioned are not the kind of things that everyday people are going to be paying for, or at least would have a choice whether you want to use a travel agent or not, for example, or custom computer programming services.
Be careful there. That's a key part of our economy.
But
yeah.
Is there
in an information-based economy, we want to tax something that is very, very vital to creating jobs. This. First of all, the opponent that I have does not raise anywhere near the adequate revenue to pay the bills. That's number one. Number two, he does it in an unfair way. The income tax, which Teddy Roosevelt, President of the United States, advocated so fervently, is based on ability to pay. And I'm disturbed nationwide by these very well-heeled folks, like my opponent, who want to shift the burden off of them onto other people. I think having an income tax is the best way to get revenue for schools, and to have artificial levies like he's proposing will not only harm schools, but it will be unfair on everyday people who raise kids.
You said that your plan has income tax or property tax relief for all homeowners in Illinois, but we're still at the $500 check from the state government, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good way to go.
Higher level homeowners still would actually pay more.
Well, 93% of the people of Illinois have property tax bills that are residential property taxpayers, have property tax bills of less than $10,000. So I think we should focus property tax relief not on the mansion owners, but really on the people who need help the most, who, in our proposal of a $500 refund every year, is pretty similar to what Jim Edgar did when he was governor. Joan knows Governor Edgar well. But, well, wait a minute. Governor Edgar said very clearly, I've read everything, I actually talked to him about it recently.
I know he told
In
me.
1997, he said we should use the income tax to better fund schools and also avoid property tax increases at the school district level. To me, that's where we should go. That is a formula that is fair, that will improve our schools and have a fair tax system. Right now, Illinois does not, I think, have enough fairness in the system, and that's why I've proposed these reforms.
What about just the whole argument, which we will continue to hear the other side through at least November 3rd, that you broke your promise because, you had said you wouldn't be for an income tax increase of more than 1%, and then this was a temporary one, and now you don't want it to go away.
Well, with respect to the issue of temporary, I said the day I signed the income tax revenue that was necessary to rescue our schools at that moment. We were in dire straits, and the credit rating agencies, all three of them, made that very, very clear. So we had to act in January of 2011 with great dispatch, and that's what governors do. They lead, they take responsibility. And so I acted to get the revenue necessary, not only to pay for our schools, but our pensions. We had to pay a full amount in the pension. We couldn't dig a deeper hole. We were already at a $100 billion liability. So, for those who are saying now we should roll that back, well, what is their solution to fill the gap, to pay the bills? And I said when I signed the proposal that we're going to look at it one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, and 1 year at a time. That's the only responsible way to go, given the tremendous mess we had that I inherited when I began. We had to dig our way out, and we are digging our way out. We're very close, as I said, to paying our bills on a 30-day cycle, just like businesses do. That's a great move forward. We're very much involved in obviously getting the pension reform before the court. I signed that bill. Keep in mind, my opponent the night before the election was running around trying to sabotage the state pension reform. He tried to sabotage local pension reforms up there in Chicago, telling people to vote no. That isn't responsible. I mean, I try to do hard things, and it's, we had a lot of hard things to do. But if you want a governor who's just easy street, don't look at me. I want to do things that are important for now and in the future, and I'm not afraid to tell people the truth about it.
Didn't Leader Durkin refute that notion that Rauner was out trying to sabotage the pension reform bill?
Let me respond to that. Mark Twain, American writer, he said, always tell the truth. It's easier to remember. I told the truth.
Marijuana. The mayor of Chicago just yesterday said that statewide law should be changed so that you decriminalize. What's your opinion on that? And the harder drugs too, like up to an ounce for misdemeanor instead of felony?
Yeah, I think we should definitely look at that. I've talked to the mayor of Chicago privately about it. And then his proposal yesterday, I think, should be carefully reviewed. I think there should be hearings. I think there are many people in our prison system who have substance abuse challenges and problems, and we need to deal with that issue. I think it's important that nonviolent drug offenders be separated from those who have committed violent crimes. So it's worth looking at. I have signed the bill for medical marijuana. I've visited with many people who benefit from that, who have great pain, including veterans. And I signed that bill, and we're carrying out the provisions now. And I think this whole issue of drug offenses needs to be looked at. I've acted on clemency requests of some who committed drug crimes, but then served their time. Then they came back home and have led exemplary lives, and in that case, I've been able to sign clemency for them. But this whole area, I think, needs a full review. It should not just be piecemeal. I think it should include a lot of the issues I just outlined.
Should marijuana be decriminalized entirely?
You mean
legalization,
like Colorado? No, I'm not for that. I think what the mayor's talking about is a ticket as opposed to something that becomes more of a prison offense. And I think that's worth having a statewide discussion on. And I think other mayors and other local officials should have a role to speak about it. The county board president up there in Cook County, Tony Preckwinkle, they run a very large jail system, and we work with them. And we need to look at this. We have to look at issues of mental health. A number of our prisoners, especially in Cook County Jail, have mental health challenges. I put in our budget this year more robust investment in mental health in our state. It was about $25 million. And I think that's part of a real discussion about how we're going to take a look at the criminal justice system. Some of the changes that were made in the late 70s, I think, haven't led to good results. And we have to really address that.
Just one more thing on marijuana. There was a bill introduced at the tail end of last spring by a dozen or so House members to form a task force to look at legalization.
Yeah.
Is that a fair approach to this issue?
Well, they can look at it. I think any kind of examination of policy issues is, worthy and helpful for people to hear information about it. Personally, I would not support that. But what the mayor said yesterday is different than what you're outlining right now. I'm willing to look at that, but I think it should be done by lots of people, not just single, one or two people making a unilateral decision.
Did the General Assembly accept your mental health budget?
Well, it's in the budget, and they basically, as your paper knows, deferred a lot of things. I was disappointed in that. And I would not say they turned it down. They said, well, let's wait till we see the election results for governor. And there is a stark choice. My opponent has proposed a budget, if you want to call it that has severe cuts and no detail. And will harm Illinois for years to come. And I have proposed something that's extremely specific, that invests in the future, that's based on this blueprint concept that Paul Vallis and I both feel strongly about. And I think the credit rating agencies like to see what our plan is. How are we going to get from here to there in the 5-year plan? And I think that's something that we want to adopt on a regular basis. I'm very happy with Paul Vallis. He's a knowledgeable person about budgets, as you know, and he works very hard, and I think he's a very substantive person. And I would say if you want a difference between our side and the other side is we've got substance and specifics, and the other side doesn't. They have platitudes and empty rhetoric.
I noticed when you were cutting your lawn that you talked about selling 9 state planes. It's an issue about who's in Springfield, who's going to live here, who's not, or what van you'll drive. If you sell all 9 state planes, have you sold any? And does that mean you're not going to take state planes anymore?
No, there's more than we're selling 9 of the state fleet. We did a comprehensive review. Just like we did with office space, we've reduced greatly the state office space, and we've done that with vehicles and things like that. And I commissioned the department to look at our fleet, and it was determined that 9 planes could be sold according to procedure, and we're going through that procedure. You got to go through it. Actually, I think state universities have a chance to.
Are you still going to fly?
Of course.
And is it necessary for a governor to fly?
Absolutely.
Your opponent makes it sound like it's not.
Yeah, well, I've been to military funerals in Albion, Illinois, and many other places in our state that are, some might say, remote. It's important. Today, there was a tornado in Harrisburg, Illinois, a deadly tornado. I was there at noontime. It happened at about 7 o'clock in the morning. Same way, the events of last November, I went in one day to Washington, then I went to Gifford, then I went to Diamond, then I went to Brookport, and then I went to New Minden. All 5 of those communities had very serious tornado damage.
Why was it important to be at all of those in one day?
Because we have an Illinois Emergency Management Agency, and I think the people who were on the ground, the volunteers trying to help folks recover, we're very glad that the governor of our state was there with the Emergency Management Agency, our Department of Transportation. It's a very difficult time for people when you have, in Washington, over 1,000 homes were demolished, and people lost their lives. So, the idea that the governor just sort of stays in one place is just not correct. You got to be there on the front line. We had a flood last year. I woke up in the governor's mansion. I got a phone call. It was about 3 in the morning, and I was all over the state for the next 8 days. We had floods in 49 counties, and so you got to pay attention to those issues. And Illinois is a big state. We're the longest state east of the Mississippi River. 583 miles of the Mississippi River is our border, and it's diverse. Southern Illinois is not the same as Chicago suburbs, and you got to be everywhere.
Speaking of floods, the mansion had one recently. Where does that stand, and how is the people's house?
Well, they got repaired, and also with respect to the roof, we were able to get a repair proposal put forward and enacted. I think we probably need to take a look at long-run repairs in the mansion. It was built in 1855. It's visited by so many people. We're the most visited governor's mansion in the whole United States. I think we have about 272 events a year. Different groups rent out parts of the mansion. So it needs some work. I think in another capital bill, which I anticipate, I hope to propose, even in November of this year, that we would have some repairs for the mansion and other public buildings. Our current capital bill has worked very well. We made great investments, far more than other states, but we have more work to do, and the high-speed rail is going to be done next year. It'll be 110 miles an hour for about 2/3 of the route, so that's a pretty good step forward.
I see that your campaign today put out a list of, I think, legal actions against nursing homes from some relation to GTCR, and the other side keeps saying you should fire these 103 people at IDOT. People say the campaign is in the mud. Why is that kind of stuff the stuff that your campaign is putting out?
Well, I just want to go back. With respect to IDOT, I did exactly what the Inspector General recommended. In fact, I signed the requirement that gave the Inspector General jurisdiction over hiring procedures. So his recommendations I've carried out. Now, on this other matter, there is a federal court case right now in Tampa, Florida, dealing with a firm known as GTCR. The R stands for Rauner, that had a chain of nursing homes that caused great death among the patients there and great harm, and they were sued on wrongful death cases, $1 billion of verdicts, and then there was an effort to basically create a sham corporation to try and transmit all those liabilities from the firm that GTCR owned to a sham corporation. And the federal bankruptcy court is looking at that right now. There's a hearing right now. So I think it's pretty timely. My opponent doesn't take responsibility. When things don't go in the right direction, I take responsibility, accountability, and act. They don't. He denies responsibility. He takes the money. He made a lot of money off this nursing home chain, and now there are accountability issues that need to be examined by a federal court. And, he calls me a lot of names, been doing that for a whole year. He's got to, answer, I think, truthfully, what exactly went on there. I think that there's a pattern, and you know it, of deception, that not telling the truth by Bruce Rauner. He didn't tell you the truth about a school up in Chicago and getting his daughter in, and he's not telling the truth right now about what went on with these nursing homes. He told the Chicago Tribune that he was only on the board of this company for a year or so. Turns out he was on for 4 years. He said he didn't have much to do with this whole thing. It turns out he was on the investment committee that, according to 3 or 4 sources, the investment committee ran the whole show and made all the major decisions. So, I think when you run for governor, you got to tell the truth. And you can't have a pattern of deception and expect the people to have any confidence in your honesty.
Expressway a little bit, why you support that project, and how you ensure that it won't take money from other transportation?
Yeah, well, it's important. We got in our state, just this May, I advocated and we were able to pass a $1.1 billion investment in the roads and bridges of our state, in addition to all the other investment that was passed in our capital bill 5 years ago. It's the biggest investment in roads and bridges in Illinois history over the last 5 years. And I'm very committed to every single district getting proper investment, especially bridges. And we've really emphasized bridges because that's a big safety issue. So I want to start with that. Now, the inland port, as it's called, the intermodal along I-80, roughly in Joliet, Elwood area, is the largest inland port in America. And it's the largest inland port in North America. It is fantastically successful. Goods come by train from both coasts, and they're unloaded in Illinois, and then they're distributed all across mid-America by trucks and so on. Now, I-80, America's highway, Interstate 80, is very congested. We don't want to have our economic growth that has been spawned by the intermodal harmed by the fact we don't have proper transportation. So the Ileana would connect I-55 to I-57 to I-65 in Indiana. Both Mitch Daniels and now the governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, and I agree that this is a needed road, primarily for trucks. It would be a toll road, and it would be a public-private partnership. And I think it's a very vital, important part of our transportation network, and I'm for doing a public-private partnership. We've never done this before in Illinois, but other states have, with good results, and we're very careful. We've had 3 or 4 major companies bid to try to do this work, and we're in the process of going through that. Now, we're not ready to, we can't go forward yet. We still have work to do on the proposal. I do not want that to take away money from other transportation priorities in downstate Illinois or suburban Chicago or city of Chicago. We have to invest robustly in transportation because it's the key part of our economy. I was just down in Metro East the other day where we're doing the high-speed rail. We're finishing up there, replacing the rails, and I could see the bridge across the Mississippi River. That was about a $400 or $500 million bridge, and it took 4 years to do, but it was vitally needed. Same way up at Quad Cities, we've got to build a bridge across the Mississippi to replace a deteriorating bridge, I-74. And here, there are things we have to do in central Illinois that we've made investments, and I'm not going to ever pull back on that. We have to be even-handed and balanced across our state.
What would the tolls be on that?
Well, that will be part of the negotiation with the third party, the public-private entity. We're the public, and whatever private entity would offer the best proposal for the public would be the one that would be picked. So that remains to be seen. But if we close our eyes to this, we're trying to do an intermodal, by the way, over in Decatur with ADM. These intermodals, to put it in perspective, the goods come in very quickly from Long Beach or LA or whatever port it might be, and they come here, Illinois, and it creates jobs right away in logistics and transportation. But now what's happening is we're putting more and more of our agriculture on those empty trains to go back out to the West Coast. They call it grain in a box. They're in containers. Containerization, big deal in the world. And so you put the grain in the container, out it goes to the West Coast ports, out to Asia. So it's another alternative to just using our waterways to get goods to market, sometimes a lot faster. And so we are strategically positioned in the middle of the country with excellent transportation, but we have to keep investing in that. This is very important for Central Illinois, the intermodal that we're doing over in Decatur, because they saw how successful I-80 was, and they want to do the same thing for Central Illinois.
But a lot of the transportation planners and even some of the trade groups are raising questions about whether the numbers add up.
Well, I think,
Do you think they're wrong?
well, I think they are wrong. I think, we have 3 or 4 major companies that have done public-private partnerships in other states, in other places, successfully, that are very interested in doing the Ileana. And when we want, there's still competition going on. And so we don't want to deter any robust competition for us to get the best deal. But to put this in perspective, and we got to keep this in mind, look at what's happening in Washington. Very little on infrastructure. They can't even pass a motion to adjourn practically. And so how are we going to get the Highway Trust Fund? If they decide, the feds, they're not going to invest in that. Our state, we're going to have to come up with other ways to finance these vital transportation investments. And this is our first foray in that area, venture. I think it's quite important. Now, another thing for Central Illinois, which I know your paper covers quite a wide area, we haven't officially announced it, but there's a major fertilizer plant that we have an excellent chance of getting not far from here in Tuscola. That would have great impact in Sangamon County and in Macon County, many other counties. And part of the reason we're in the hunt for this is, one, our transportation, two, our access to water, and three, our gas pipelines, natural gas pipelines. Every major natural gas pipeline is in Illinois. This is other infrastructure. And we have to understand that this is a golden opportunity for us to help our agriculture, which is our strongest business, with access to fertilizer that's safe. This particular plant is a new technology that's much safer than others, and will make our agriculture more productive because of the access to natural gas and the fertilizer plant being in our own backyard. So these are things that we have to plan ahead on. We work with these companies. I think it's very important to realize that many North American headquarters of foreign companies are in Illinois, and that's growing, and we're going to keep it growing because we have a good market and we have well-educated, well-skilled workers, far more than our friends in Indiana or elsewhere. Our college degrees and associate degrees are much better than other states, and we have higher wages, and we want higher wages. We're about 8th or 9th in the country in wages. Over in Indiana, they're 40th. I don't want to copy that approach. I don't want to race to the bottom. I want to have well-educated workers. We got to invest in Lincoln Land Community College. We got to invest in UIS, invest in UIUC. We're building buildings over there that are, the fastest computer of any university on planet Earth is Blue Waters at U of I, and our state made investments in it.
Yeah, you still hear the business community and certainly the candidates on the other side talk about business climate, workers' comp. I know you made some changes, but causation was not among them. I heard somebody telling me this morning they were talking about Indiana and how much cheaper it is. Any further change there, and how do you respond to those ideas that the businesses want to leave for cheaper operating costs?
Well, we're not racing to the bottom. I think that's a wrong way to go. Lower wages, not protecting workers, that's the wrong way to go. You can't have a modern 21st century economy unless you invest in your workers, you have safe working conditions. Now, with respect to work comp, we work with the Illinois Manufacturers Association and the Illinois Retail Merchants. They were for us. And we passed a reform. It wasn't just talking about it. It saved $450 million for businesses so far, and 19% cut in work comp rates. I'm always willing to look every year at that issue, if we can make further reforms. Same way with unemployment insurance. We enacted reforms with those very groups on unemployment insurance. So I think those who are claiming that we don't have a good business climate are just plain wrong. I recently was with a company called Grundfos that came from Denmark, the world's leading manufacturer of water pumps. They picked Illinois because of our workforce, because of our policies of protecting workers, because of our well-educated workforce, and definitely our transportation. So, we can't put blinders on our eyes and think we're running a third world country here. I don't think that's the way to go. I think our state is the 19th largest economy in the whole world. And we understand that in order to progress, you have to make investments in education, in human infrastructure, and you have to make investments in physical infrastructure.
And I've also heard that on the unemployment numbers, that I know they've been good, but that they're either doctored or skewed because of people who have dropped out of the workforce. Somebody said that.
Okay, that's the latest canard of the other side. Any good news for them is apparently bad news. We've had an unemployment decline the most rapid decline in unemployment in the last 30 years. The folks who are leaving the workforce, many of them retiring, our statistics are no different than other states. So the fact is, Illinois is creating jobs. It's making an economic comeback. We know we have a long way to go. But I know what I inherited when I started. I got a call from the Chrysler people the night I got sworn in. Well, they had 200 jobs in Belvedere, and they're about ready to give up the ship. Fortunately, the president and us, we worked with President Obama to help rescue Chrysler. They now have 4,500 jobs, and they're doing quite well. Same way with Ford, 3 shifts now. Back then, it was a 1 shift. And so those are manufacturers, and they have a lot of suppliers and subcontractors. We brought in Nippon Sharyo, which makes rail cars, 21st century rail cars. Our friends in Wisconsin alienated them, said they didn't want to be for high-speed rail. We're for it. And this big company in Rochelle is creating hundreds of jobs, building 21st century rail cars that'll be visiting this community and many others. Manufacturing them right now. And so we're doing well in manufacturing. We've got to do better. Agriculture, obviously, is going to be a good year, and we want to keep it that way. And investing in education pays dividends for years to come, not just now, in early childhood in particular. And I think Joan could tell you, the best investment government can ever make is 0 to 5, those kids who are born today to 5 years old. There's 1 million children in Illinois in that category, and that's bigger than some states. And as far as I'm concerned, we've got to invest much more in that, and by maintaining our tax system that we have, the revenue we get from the income tax, we will have the adequate resources to robustly invest in education. Whereas the other side wants to slash it and fire 1 out of 6 teachers in Illinois. That's a prescription for disaster, and you don't have to go any further than Kansas to find out where that goes.
You recently did a minimum wage challenge. Critics say that was nothing more than a campaign stunt. Or was it a stunt? And what did you learn when you did that?
It's not a stunt. I believe in this. I believe in social justice. I was involved in getting the minimum wage raised in 2002 and then again in 2006. I put it on the ballot in Cook County in 2006, and I believe in a fundamental principle that if you work hard 40 hours a week, you shouldn't have to live in poverty. That's what Pope Francis says. You shouldn't have a job and still be in poverty. We want to lift people out of poverty. And so we have to have wages for hard jobs. Many people doing minimum wage jobs are doing very difficult jobs, and they should get paid at least $10 an hour. That's what the referendum calls for. Now, when I took this challenge, it was really designed to raise awareness to me and to everybody else of how hard it is. You basically get $79 for a whole week to pay for food and dry cleaning or anything else. And, it's quite a challenge. I learned from that. And I think it's helpful for everybody. When I went to a restaurant, looked at the menu, looking at everything, I ordered grits. That was the cheapest thing on the menu. So I think, we all have to understand that we're a community. And if anything, Pope Francis has helped us worldwide in understanding that we're all interrelated. Those who've made huge incomes at top of the income ladder, they shouldn't take for granted those folks who open doors for them and do hard things for them. And so this is a social justice mission, and we're going to succeed in it. We're going to raise the minimum wage. And it was with Martin Sheen. He's a fellow who believes in the same thing I do. I got to know him because he called me up out of my cell phone out of the blue when I signed the bill to abolish the death penalty. And he came to Illinois, and he's for raising the minimum wage nationwide. And he said, you judge people in public office by how many scars they have on their back. He said, I got a lot of scars, referring to me. So I want to make sure I have scars for good causes, and that's what it's all about.
There are still business people who say they won't be able to hire as many, or they'll have to let some people go.
I think the statistics are exact opposite. The Federal Reserve Bank found that by raising the wages of people of very modest income on the minimum wage, folks do not admire that money in the bank vault, that raise they get. They immediately immediately spend it. They go out in the community and local businesses and spend the money and create other jobs. And so if you want to grow the economy, raising the minimum wage, folks who are haven't had a wage increase in some time, nationwide for sure, will have the opportunity to buy goods and services that help their family. And 70% of our economy is consumer purchasing power. If we're going to grow the economy, we want to definitely help consumers, and it's a way to do it.
North Star Lottery contract, where does that stand?
Well, it's going to be, we have to have a whole new bidding process to get a new manager. I think it's very important to have the best company we can find. So that'll be a rigorous competition. It's important that be done right.
And you want an outside manager?
Yeah, we haven't left the idea of having a private company do it. Disappointed, frankly, in the company that has been here up to now. I think they have to do a better job of reaching folks on the internet and reaching folks who are middle class and who see the lottery perhaps as entertainment. So that's what we'll be looking for in a new firm. I think everyone learned lessons here. Having said that, the revenue that has come in is higher than it was before. It has been used to help invest in our infrastructure, our capital bill, and that is something that we want to continue, obviously, investing in the basic structure and infrastructure of Illinois.
Expanded gambling? Yeah.
Well, I vetoed two bills there. I felt both of them were insufficient on ethics, overseeing the operation. I like the gaming board. I think the gaming board has had a good record of success at overseeing the various 10 casinos that exist now. They're tough. They make sure things are done right. When they see things wrong, they get right at it, and they've had 3 or 4 instances where they intercepted things that could have been bad for Illinois. So if the bill isn't strong in that area, I would never sign it. Having said that, I think some of the proposals are greatly improved from what I first saw. Banning contributions from gaming operators, casino operators, I think that's an important mission. Now, the bill has to, I think, also make sure the money that comes from gaming goes to an important purpose. To me, it's education. That's all the money now goes to education. I don't want to see a lot of things that are put in there that take away money from schools. And I think we also have to realize gaming is not a golden goose that is just going to produce golden eggs forever. There is a limit of entertainment dollar, and we shouldn't kid ourselves. So we have to be very clear-eyed on this whole issue.
So are you not necessarily adamant that the money would have to go to education? That would be your preference, but you wouldn't necessarily...
Well, it could be broadly defined. If it was used by for paying pensions of teachers, I'd certainly look at that,
Didn't lottery and gaming all go to education at one point in time?
The casino gaming, right now, it all goes to the Common School Fund.
Yeah,
right now.
But lottery did it not?
Yeah,
When
lottery.
did that get changed?
Well, that was in the capital bill, the video lottery, that was designed to help the capital bill. And then the private manager issue came in there too on the lottery. Now, you had a question I didn't.
So even though the lottery has grown, that money won't go to the common school fund?
The lottery enhancement goes to the capital bill. That was the bill that I signed. I had 2 Republican leaders come to my office and said they would only go for a $31 billion capital bill for infrastructure if we included video gaming. So, that was their demand. So I wasn't excited about that, but we had to get moving here. We had 10 years without a capital bill in Illinois. We had a huge recession with people out of work. The operating engineers were running food banks back 5 years ago. Now there's nobody on the bench. They have more work than they know what to do with, and we want to keep it that way and more people working.
Harold Washington has come alive again in some ads, and said you were just a PR guy when you ran his revenue department. And
Ran the department
should have
with-
fired you, right? Or never,
No.
never should have hired you.
No.
That's a long time ago, but
I was a revenue director. Before that, I was a commissioner of the Board of Tax Appeals in Cook County. I enacted strong ethics standards at both places, and I enforced them. I think just seeing that commercial or hearing about it from my opponent, where's his substance? If he's just going to run a whole campaign over the next 41 days, 82 if you don't sleep, and I'm not planning to sleep, because I certainly don't want to see him as governor, and I think I'm doing a much better job than he'll ever do. But having said that, a campaign of smears day after day, yesterday was a smear, today's another one on his part, and he doesn't answer any questions about a specific matter that is occurring in Tampa, Florida, a federal court investigation of his nursing home chain and the wrongful deaths that came out of that. If that's what you want to do, we'll lay out your record crystal clear for the people, but I want to debate on these issues. How are we going to fund more education in our state? To me, that's the way to go. And, if you want to run a non-specific, substance-less campaign without substance that my opponent is doing, that's the wrong way to go for Illinois.
Are you supporting Senator Menard's education bill, and are you working with him on it?
He came into my office. We had about an hour and a half discussion. I definitely like the fundamental concept of looking at the school aid formula. The bill passed the Senate. It's going to have work to do in the House. I think there's more debate and discussion. Clearly, the school aid formula needs a review, but there's a more fundamental question. You can have a formula, but if you don't have enough money to put in the formula, how are you going to run the schools? My opponent wants to take $4 billion out of our education budget with no way to replace it. It's just thin air. And so, to me, that's the threshold question before we get to Andy Menard's bill, which is how do you allocate the money for education? If you take $4 billion out, everybody gets hurt, and especially children, and especially poor children.
well, he says if you don't have the formula right, then you lose the incentive to make it better and fairer, and so he thinks that's the first thing you should do.
Well, I personally think investing in early childhood, as we have proposed, it's about $1 billion, $1.5 billion in early childhood alone, is something that we can have broad consensus on. And I certainly want to fight for that. Also, we have the scholarship program called MAP, Monetary Assistance Program. About $380 million is allocated to that now for 140,000 students to get scholarships to go to either UIS or Lincoln Land or a private school that's located in Illinois. I think we should double that program, and my budget does that over 5 years. The biggest source of indebtedness right now is college loan debt. And so we need to have a program of scholarships that's doubled in size. Because right now we have 150,000 students who qualify for scholarships, but the money runs out. And so I don't want to see that happen. And to me, you got to have resources. You're kidding yourself if you don't.